Hello, I'm Richard Raffan, and this is the 14th of the Four Ways video projects. My choice this month, and I thought a fantastical goblet would give the other three a chance to show their decorative and embellishing skills. I have here a lump of cedar, 4-inch square, 8 inches long, which is 100 square by 200 millimeters. And I did do a few drawings to start with, and so we'll go from there. Please take a look at what the other three have come up with for their goblets, and you'll find links to their videos in my notes below. I did a few kind of rough sketches more to show you where I was going rather than for myself. One idea was to have broad bands. I'm thinking in terms of fairly rough decoration, so broad bands, and then I was going to brush in between some bands here which had kind of big grooves or something in, or I couldn't find anything shiny to stick into those. I was thinking about nails, shortened nails, but then we'll see a bit later about that. I was looking at a bit of colour and was trying some basic wood stains, but they weren't bright enough for what I wanted. But so I've got a squarish shape there. I tend to go more for the round. One of the things I think with this shape is, what am I going to do with the inside to kind of make it fairly heavy, and it gets a bit too chunky. So I've got this where I've got my bands of colour, and then maybe a brushed pedestal down here, and if I don't like that I can take it away later. And here's a great big long deep one, which I don't really like as a shape so much. I think I prefer going more in that direction. So that's broadly where I'm going. As far as the surface goes, I've tried some little bits of colour here on the bits of cedar. Just here they go. These are acrylic. They're non-toxic, just to keep these kind of safety please happy. But it's very likely that I'll actually end up with the verdigris finish, which is this. This one's my little brush pot at the moment. But I really like that kind of thing, and it can display some colour as well quite nicely. But first we've got to get a goblet made. I've lined up my heavier tools for these. Once you start hollowing more than a couple of inches over a rest, the wood exerts a lot more leverage on the cutting edge. So this handle is 540 millimeters, which I think is about 22 inches. I've got my fairly heavy Thompson gouge. It's a half inch flute. Square end scraper for getting the bulk of the inside out, probably. I'm not absolutely sure yet about that, but it's 3/8 of an inch thick. It's you need a heavyish one. I've got the 1-inch one done, but the chances are I'll be using the heavier tool again with the longer handle. The only skew I've got has fairly short handle. It's 1-inch skew, and I've got a detail gouge here in a fairly heavy old glazer handle. And as always, I'm going to rough down with a 1-inch continental roughing gouge. nasty surprises, which it doesn't seem to. Or what might be a split there. Let's plane this with the skew. So it's a large block, rest comes up, it's a good inch above centre, so that I'm holding the tool more or less, well, I'm comfortable. So the tool is probably dropped below horizontal by about 20 degrees, but I'm comfortable, that's the main thing. Still flat there. So at the moment I'm running about 900, and I can come up a bit now. So I'm now up to 14. Feel more comfortable going with the long point down on longer cuts. Right. Well, might be a bit of a split there, but it won't be anything to worry about. That's good. Right, I can now face up the end, and that will fit into a chuck, which is good. And I can do this either with the skew, long point, right into the middle. That's fine. It's going to be quite useful to keep a conical hole at the middle for when I come to rechuck it to finish it off. Same the other end. It's only not quite so far because there's a spur drive. That looks like a split, but that will come out. These also look like little splits, but I can cope with those if they're in the base. Where are we? Just have to have a little think about that. I had my little think, so what I'm going to do is to get rid of the fine little frill of material down into the center, and turn it around and do the same the other end. There'll still be the spur marks at the other end, but the face is now slightly concave. Now you can also do this with a gouge. This is the detail gouge. This is actually my preferred method of cutting end grain. Let's get a more support from the gouge than you do really with the skew chisel. Now this is the bigger end, and that is going into the chuck. So there are a few little what look like splits around here. So I'm going to super glue those. So I've got the blank right into the chuck jaws, these are shark jaws. I trued the end grain and it's slightly undercut, so it sits comfortably right back into the bottom of the chuck. The serrations in here have dug in, it's fairly soft wood, so it'll do that. They'll all come off later. What I'm most concerned with at this stage is a nice firm grip, because I'm going to hollow to about here, and that's quite a long way down. And next stage is I'll just put some super glue in these splits, and then come back and hollow it a bit later. Now, putting the super glue in here, that's supposed to be thin, didn't want to really flow into the splits. so I'll need to keep a close eye on those, and just so I know where to look, I'll mark with pencil down here. That might be another split, so just, oh, that's going to come out anyway, it doesn't matter. Hollowing. I'm going to get a depth hole down, and we'll go down about a third of the way, I suppose. Helps have a starter hole for the drill. And going that far to start with, probably be a little bit deeper. Yeah, no, that'll do for the start. Now I've got two ways of going in here. I can either go in with a scraper and just start to open it up, but I'm going to start off with a with the back hollowing, trying it with the Thompson this time. This isn't really separate video on back hollowing. This tool is not quite long enough in the bevel for this, but doing okay. Just come in with the 1-inch round nose. So the thumb's really a fulcrum. Weight, the tool, will stay on the rest thanks to gravity. Don't need to push it down. If you have your thumb on top, you really no side control over the tool. I'm going to be wanting to leave grooves and things on the outside of this, so I don't want it too thin. Now you generally can't see what you're doing at the bottom of the cut here, so there's no point in trying to look. The reason you can't see is because there are shavings in the way. So I can mark how far down I want to go with a magnet to be about that far. About another 1/2 inch to go. Feels pretty good, so it's slightly wider just in from the rim, and the bottom is looks pretty good. We'll see if we can get a view for you inside. So the tool is tilted down very slightly at center, and I'm working at center. I do not normally hold the tool like this, as you've just seen, and then as I come away I drop the handle slightly, and then I can go in and back down to the bottom. But normally I have my hand right over the top and my arm is right over the tool, and the handle's aligned along my forearm. So I've got the maximum weight behind the tool. Now I can also get in there with this heavier tool with the very long handle. Any little bump at the center, just come up from underneath and drop the handle and swing it away. You don't need to push, because if you push you start going deeper than you want. Next thing is to mark the depth. And I mark the exact depth of the inside, then I know where the inside depth is, and this gets sanded. That's a pretty good cut on the inside, so 180 grit should do it. Fresh herb, a little bit of torn out grain on the long grain there and there, so better to go in with something heavier, and or a bit of 80. That's what came to hand. So this is probably going to be painted on the inside anyway, so doesn't need to be too finely sanded. That's the exact inside depth where the darkest bit of the line is. So I'm going to allow, it's going to be fairly thick, this goblet, so we'll cut in there and leave about 1/3 of the diameter, and coming up the outside, trim up the skew. The main thing is to keep some of this shoulder so I know where the inside depth is. It'd be nice to get rid of some of this so I can see what I'm doing. Peeling cut. You don't take away too much because you still want the strength coming through from the chuck. Yeah, the camera is where I normally am. So I can follow that curve through to that face, because I know the inside is actually about there. I want to start decorating this, and I was thinking of kind of beads standing up. Let me just mark this out with pencil. So maybe I have a bead there and a big kind of bead there, so it's going to be shallow in between. I'll do that with a parting tool. In fact, even better might be, I've got a small skew which will fit in there. That's the peeling cut. And that does not sound like a particularly good cut. Sandable anyway. Right, I'm going to put a groove in there just to define my bead. rest a bit because I'm working on a smaller diameter. Not really an issue. So all that's going to be kind of messed up a bit anyway. Messed up, embellished is the word I'm looking for. So I want to see the curve here flowing through under the bead. Do I need the beads the same size? Don't think it really matters. I've got 2 bands and that'll be all right, I think. And I need to open up this, the top part of what will be proper big bead, so we'll call these bands here. Needs to be a little bit deeper. Okay, just about get in there with the skew. That bit of the softer grain really is pretty bad, so badly cut. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to paint this with the verdigris. That almost provides it with a key, so I can get in with these and just cut that so it looks cleaner. Be even easier with a smaller skew, which I don't have. Slightly better. I think given that I'm going to smother it with stuff, I'll just leave it like that. These splits are looking a bit iffy at the moment, although when I pull pressure on, they don't open up because they're solid on the inside, so they're not very deep. So I can put more super glue into there and then the paint will go over the lot. And meantime I will do some decoration around here, and I do that with my Dremel, and I've got a rounded cutter on it. Drop the rest, so that's going to be where I'm going to be supporting myself, maybe even without the rest. Yeah, that's going to be more comfortable. You can see that, so I'm resting my hand on the banjo, and then I can manipulate the drill from there. And I forgot to put some guidelines on, so I can just drill on those lines. Another one in down there. I don't want these evenly spaced, I want them approximately even. And by not spacing them absolutely evenly, generally have a bit more energy to them. Now I can grip this, just turn it around and do the end with tailstock support. Right, this is turned around, just lightly gripping the top, just enough to to drive it, supported at the other end. I wouldn't put that in the chuck without the support, far too likely to rattle loose. Now if I want to reduce the height I can, but I don't think I will. This is running at 1350. Oh, I'd forgotten about the bead I was going to have. Get the detail gauge. Right on its side. And I'll put some more blips or something in there, I expect. Not quite what I had in mind originally. I was expecting to have a bigger bead, but so I'll just live with that. This curve needs to just be, oh, it's not actually up completely. Makes a difference to the cut too. Then across the bottom it's already slightly concave. It would be better to make just a little bit more because the centre bit there is pretty close to being higher than the rim. Not much of the cone in the wood at the moment, so that gets wound forwards. Same again. Now there's plenty of space under the ruler. So this needs more marks. And I'll change the cutter, I think, so I'll have more round ones there, and I'll change the cutter for the ones further down. I'm hesitating here because I think we've got those two sets of round ones up there. I think I'll just put in some different kinds of shapes, so I will change the cutter now. Some of these cuts are little bits of furry grain sticking up, so I'm going to get rid of that with a Nylex brush. have the lathe running slowly. It's beginning to look quite medieval, which is what I had in mind. Oh, it's not in very much now. That's going to go in there, and if there are any bruise marks, teeth marks, that's just extra decoration. And this time it's going to come right in there. Alright, so that's my basic goblet, and that will now get decorated. Get decorated with verdigris and rust rather than colour. That's partly because on my Turning Toys video there were a couple of goblets which are done entirely with colour. So goblets of fire for young wizards they were. This is a slightly different thing. So there's the goblet. That is now going to go between centres so I can decorate it. Unfortunately with this blank, I forgot to square up that end. So to get it square in the chuck, I've got a hole at the other end here. So that will go into there. So I know that's running true, so I check it. Yep. So this now goes over here, and nice thing here is that it's right up like a jam chuck. Doesn't have to be a jam chuck, but what this does is it stops any paint going in to the inside, which I don't really want. So that's not held particularly, that's only just held there to keep this all steady. That's it now. The rest is now going to get painted, and it's going to get some language rust. This I think is an Australian brand, so you're not likely to get it elsewhere, but there are faux rust finishes like this available in paint stores, so I'm told. So this is a pretty thick kind of paint, and it's got lots of ferrous metal in it, and I don't really want that on the lathe bed. Just bring a board underneath. Right, so I'm just going to slop this, get this all on initially. Now when this dries, I apply an oxidizing patina, and I want that to be able to pool in the little indentations I've got, especially down around here. And when it pools, it will bring up a bright rust colour. But I do need to have it soaking for quite a time, or I need to have it pooling for a time to really bring the best of the colour out. Now I'm going to have some verdigris in with this in a minute, because I want the variation. My main decision really at the moment is how do I want to apply? Do I have rust at the bottom and then coming up into a kind of bit of verdigris up near the top? And I think I can try and vary it like that. So that will see me with that lot. Now this stuff is extremely expensive, and unfortunately I had to go out and buy another pot of it yesterday, because the last lot had solidified in the bottom of the tin and the container. So it's going to get its lid back on. Right, so that now gets to dry off, and I think I'm just going to leave it rotating very gently so that it doesn't drip too much in one direction. So that just needs to dry off before I apply the patina. So this might have been a good idea, but the motor overheated and the lathe stopped. And while the goblet was gently rotating, I used up the surplus mix to do these the little green tone Banksia bowls, so they'll now be rusty verdigris pots. Another little one there, and they sit on tripods while they dry out. The boats, haven't done any of those for a time, but these have been sitting around waiting for some surplus paint, and so I'll get those finished off in the next few days. Last night I put on some patina, oxidizing patina, and that's brought out the colour. I kept this wet for about 2 hours, and I'm going to put some more on. Now this morning I came in and just dotted round some verdigris in the dots, and so the next job really is going to put another load of patina on, and the verdigris bits should come up rather like that. That's a bit of verdigris which got loose and come up very nicely. I don't want the whole thing that colour up the top. Anyway, it's going to be a question of controlling it. I can just kind of highlight the dots. I've got a syringe of patina, and that's where that lot might come from, so just need little pools of it in there, and that will bring the colour out more. It's extremely time consuming if I have to let that lot dry and then turn the whole thing round slightly. I think probably I'm just going to give it a go just with the brush, the patina, and then we'll I'll see what happens after that. And I've got a tray underneath so to catch the drips. And this really keeps me occupied for the next hour, just making sure this stays wet. And what I'm hoping for is something like this coming up, which is what happened to the little bowl which you saw earlier. This is only half an hour later. The verdigris always comes up a lot faster in colour than the rust does, so I'm delighted with the way this has come up, and now I've got to work out what to do with the inside, and I'm thinking in terms of something kind of red, and I might just let some of the rust come down. I'd never merged acrylic and these faux finishes before, so we'll see what happens. Nothing like a bit of an adventure. So this is going to be very experimental. I have here some rust and some verdigris and my brush, and I'm just going to kind of loosely mix that and then apply it to the inside of the rim. Such a nice quiet activity after turning. And so what I have in mind is a kind of emerging a red blending into the verdigris. So I don't want absolutely clean paint either. I'm going to have it kind of streaky, I suppose is the word. A little bit of yellow in there, highlighters. Like all these things, the one thing I learned at art school is the trick is knowing when to stop. You have to go too far on occasion to know when is the time to stop. Unfortunately, I was extremely careless and got a big blob of acrylic paint up here, and I couldn't just wipe it off, or I had to let that dry and then go over it again, and I've lost that nice patina which I had originally. Now I'm trying to get it back. Another error I made was having verdigris in the holes as well as over the dark area, so there wasn't going to be any major difference between the dots and the surrounding area. So I've gone over these with rust, so I hope now that these little black dots are going to come up like the bottom there. So I've now got to paint all this again. Another thing I discovered this afternoon was I left the lathe on, just gently rotating. Came back to find the lathe had overheated, the motor had overheated, and so I contacted Rick Mark, who pointed out something I suppose I should have known, that the motor needs to run fast in order to run the fan to keep it cool. Yeah, so you need to get the belt on the right pulley, so you've got the small pulley on the motor driving the large pulley on the drive shaft. So this time I'm going to rotate this by hand. And so on. So here we are, the finished thing.